Well, in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about home gyms, specifically my home gym, what I did to get some of the essentials that I needed, how I use some of this stuff, and let's just go ahead and start talking about it so that you guys have a better idea of how I did some budget buys, how I started to get some of the equipment I needed. And again, this is coming from a former college strength coach. I was a strength coach at a university at the time when I bought all of this stuff so that I would have something for my own personal use as well as stuff that I could train other people with. So it didn't cost me as much as some of you might think. And hopefully I can give you a really good idea of what could be like some areas where you want to spend a little bit more and what are some areas where you want to kind of budget a little bit better. Okay, so first off, my biggest purchase was actually my squat stand. Okay, so you can buy a full rack if you have the space for it and you have the money for it. And if you want to buy different attachments and do different things in the long term, that's where I think having a full rack would be much more useful than what I was doing. But I figured as far as my barbell lifts go, the primary ones that I was going to be utilizing would be like a squat where I actually had to have some type of squat stand for that, and bench press. So like any form, whether it was an incline, flat bench, whatever it was, or even barbell press, right? So I wanted to make sure that I could do those things no matter what. Everything else that I was doing from the floor, we'll talk about in a little bit. But for me, that's when I went with Rogue's Monster Squat Stand. It is relatively budget friendly. Let's see. So Rogue, what is their pricing with all of that stuff? If I'm not mistaken, it is a few $100s. Yeah, squat stand. I did the Rogue Monster Lite, and that was about $400. That sounds right to me. And again, I only wanted to utilize it for those main lifts. If you want to use something else, totally understand. There's a couple different options out there, and we can get into that. But I've had mine for about 6 years now, and it's been great. Okay. I've gotten a ton of utility out of it. I haven't had any issues with it. It's been fantastic. I've moved it across the country. So I've been able to do that. As far as barbells go, this is where understanding your needs of what you are going to actually be utilizing the bar for is going to be important. If you are a power lifter, and you're actually competitive or you're looking to be competitive and you already have the ability to kind of get there, I think investing in a bar that is going to be able to handle the weight that you're moving is going to be important. You want to have the right tools for the right job. And for me, I bought the bar to be somewhat of a utility bar with a focus on the ability to do Olympic lifts. But I also knew that my own limitations are that I'm not a world-class weightlifter, so I don't need to spend the money on $1,000 bar. As much as I would love to do that, it definitely wasn't in the budget. I decided to go with American Barbell, and it has been great for training purposes. And that was kind of like the main thing. I wanted something that I could utilize for Olympic weightlifting and have the utility to also do bench press and squat and deadlift and all of that good stuff, right? Without breaking the bank. I knew that it was quality enough. I knew the tensile strength was good enough that I could use it. I didn't want super aggressive knurling, so that's where I decided to go with the bar that I did. And if I were to go back, I may choose an option. I may have chosen an option that was a little bit more specific to Olympic weightlifting just because that's where I use the majority of my training. The only issue with that is a lot of the bars, even the entry point bars for weightlifting bars, are going to be fairly expensive in the grand scheme of things. Rogue has a great utility bar, but most of Rogue's bars for their like utility bars are kind of geared more towards the powerlifting side of training. I've used them a dozen times, or not even dozen, like literally, I've used them so many times in the settings that I've worked in. Obviously, Eleiko is going to be a bar that you kind of aspire to when it comes to weightlifting, and even their training bar is a really, really good bar. They had a performance bar. I don't know if they still do, that we used in several gyms that I worked in, and those are very expensive. So that's where I decided to go with American Barbell. It was budget friendly. I knew that it was also going to be utilized appropriately for what I needed. Okay. And again, I've had that bar for 6 years. I think I've done like a coat of oil on it just to keep some of the moisture off, but that's really been all of the maintenance I've had to do on that. Okay. And I've used the bar fairly significantly. Okay. If you are looking to train in a home gym, I highly recommend getting some sort of rubber weights, and what you use those for and how long term you want those is going to dictate what type of plate that you want to actually have. So for me, I bought plates that were more, again, geared towards weightlifting. So they're 20 kilo plates, are going to be fairly thin compared to like the recycled rubber type plates that are made by several different companies that are kind of like the fat wheel 20 kilo or 45 pound plates. I wanted something that I could stack and stack and stack, and it would make it, so that the weight was more distributed towards the center and all that good stuff, so that I could have a good weightlifting option. Additionally to that, I also wanted something with a metal core. So not just the ring, but an actual metal core. I think that the plates that you get, generally speaking, that kind of meet those requirements are a little bit higher quality. They last longer, even if they're like the entry point weights for most companies. If they have like the actual metal disc, it's going to help with the spin on the bar. It's going to help with the weight distribution of the actual plate, all of that good stuff. So that's why I decided at the time, I went with a company that was fairly local to me while I was in the West Coast, which was Neon Strength. My understanding is, I believe they're out of business now, or they were bought up. And, if you're able to find a company that you can get a fairly affordable price with some of that stuff, I think, again, as long as you're not looking to compete at the international level, you'll be fine with whatever you're training for. Okay. If you're looking to do powerlifting, obviously, and you want to have more of the, like if you're lifting 600 pounds plus with powerlifting, then you might want to go into like the steel discs of the plates versus, doing something like what I did, which was rubber, which I wanted to have so that I could drop. Doing the Olympic lifts, you're going to be dropping weight from overhead, so you need to be prepared to have that weight fall onto something and not cause a ton of damage. I think all in all, with the weights that I bought, I spent a few $100s on it. It wasn't anything crazy. I knew that outside of the rack, that the weights themselves was going to be the most expensive thing that I would buy. So that was something that I was making sure to kind of budget for. So now beyond that, I bought a budget-friendly bench that was an adjustable bench. I still have it to this day. It's been great. It was kind of an off-brand. So if you're familiar with E.T.E, it's like a Chinese manufacturer. It's nothing crazy. It's not, rogue built, really, really high durability, high quality, but it absolutely gets the job done with everything I need. I've obviously used it for flat bench and incline bench. I've used it for different lower body lifts as well. Some of those Bulgarians, right? Different types of things like that. And it's been perfectly fine over the years. So there's been like a couple little things that have like chipped off of it. But I'm not throwing the thing around. I'm fairly cognizant of how I'm using my equipment just because I've worked in gyms for so long. I'm not rubbing it down with stuff that's going to destroy the material. That's something that you need to be aware of. If you're going to spray on whatever for your gym equipment, be ready for it to rust or have the leather wear, all of that good stuff, the pleather, whatever it is. Okay. That bench was a really, really good quality bench. I still have it again, and it is not super expensive. Again, depends on what you're using your stuff for, but I do highly recommend getting an adjustable bench, investing some of the time or some of the money into that so that you have an option, getting something that's sturdy. Okay. If you're going to get something that's just like a cheap flat bench, be ready to have that thing move on you all the time. Okay. But if you aren't really using it for a whole lot, that's another thing to think about. Okay. So those were like my big pieces. All right. Outside of that, I ended up getting, adjustable dumbbells. So, there are a lot of different companies that have made adjustable dumbbells now, from when I first bought mine. And I just bought, big name. The price was way more expensive than it needed to be. And adjustable dumbbells have gone up in price, I think, overall since COVID happened. So unfortunately, it's just a hot commodity. If I were to go back now, I would buy the Barbell adjustable dumbbells. I think they are great quality. I think they are fairly easy to use. They have a nice kind of look to them. They're much more dumbbell-y look versus the PowerBlock that I bought, which is much more square, and it's kind of a pain in the ass sometimes to move those. Having a cord kind of hold it, or a little plastic piece hold the weight in place, is not my favorite thing when it comes to the PowerBlock. I wish that they had some better options within that. I'm sure they probably do, but I'm not willing to spend another $900 or whatever it is on their higher level stuff. So adjustable dumbbells, depending on what you need. I bought the up to, I think, 80-pound adjustable dumbbell. That way you get a ton of use out of everything that you need, whether you're going to be doing a dumbbell row, bench, overhead press, whatever it is, right? RDL, you have some options there. When I was looking for kind of like auxiliary stuff to give me some more options outside of that, the only things that I bought were a landmine attachment so that I could actually put into the plates themselves. So I didn't buy anything that would attach to the rack. There are great options that are out there now. And then I also bought some bands just to like be able to use some stuff. And now a lot of these companies are putting in attachments for your rack to have lever systems go on. And I think that is super freaking cool. And that's something that I would want in the long term. I would have to buy a larger squat stand or rack to be able to do that. But if that's something that you really like, if you like to run cables, then I think that's a great option as well. And so I'll see if I can kind of pull together some of the equipment that I have and put it in a link or something like that in this video.